Let's continue on our teachings about death. So next chapter, you ready? Chapter 23, the practice if your loved one dies suddenly. Okay? I guess I have questions first. Come on, questions from what we've discussed so far. Any questions at all from what we've discussed so far? Is there any? No? Yes. What's your name?
Al.
Al, go Al.
So when we look at, obviously Buddhism takes a pretty good stance against assisted suicide, but with modern medicine, right, we can keep people alive.
That's right, exactly.
Like really, really long.
Exactly.
Obviously it's better to know that there are humans suffering here than to know what rebirth they will take after this. But at what point does it become?
I understand, exactly, it's a problem, isn't it? So I remember His Holiness saying, that's the problem with our medical system, we're so clever, we end up creating dilemmas for ourselves with our systems. And instead of just allowing people to die naturally, we're so obsessed with keeping people alive, or now we're going to the other extreme, we're going to kill them, you know, it's ridiculous, you know, so extreme. So I remember His Holiness saying it's sensible if, you know, if a person can be kept, if he can person to stop the plug, to pull the plug, you know. And then, but I mean, when you do that, so you make sure the motivation is pure, you make sure you dedicate, you make sure you do lots of prayers and pujas and practice of the person. I would even suggest you make sure you consult a Lama when was the best time to do it. Once you've got some wisdom, can see the person's mind. So there's ways to do it, because you have to do now, otherwise the person will be there for 100 years. It's just ridiculous, you know. It's got to be the right motivation. Like if you don't like your new wife, you can, I would kill her out of compassion, but you're simply happy to get rid of her, you know. No, it can't be like that. So I think it's just, yeah, you've got to be sensible. And the one of, you know, assisted suicide now, or people calling it sounds very compassionate. Of course, because it makes sense if you don't consider reincarnation, doesn't it? It makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. If nothing continues.
Well, what if people are really suffering physically?
Well, that's the point. But we know that. That's the point, isn't it? That's why you kill yourself, isn't it? That's why you want to kill your grandma, because she's suffering, isn't it? So what's your point? Why do you say that at this moment? What's the point? Bring it up.
Well, where does mercy come in? If someone...
But it's a question, okay, so you're missing the point here. No, it's okay. My usual blunt, rude, polite way of saying things. Where's Myrna? She walked out. Myrna, I'm always pointing out her mistakes, you see. I'm always pointing. So listen. If nothing continues, then please bloody kill me right now. I don't want to sit there suffering for no reason. Killing a person if nothing continues, if the materialist view is valid, if the materialist view is correct, that there's no consciousness except the body, then it seems reasonable out of kindness to kill somebody. Of course it does. You see my point? Of course it is reasonable. But what if the consciousness does continue? And what if this business of karma is the way reality is? The karmic seeds are triggered, and then it determines your next life. If there is a future, then it's just, if there is a future after death, and in the Buddhist view, if it's the karma of the person, their particular karmic seeds that are the ones that will be triggered, that will determine the next life, then clearly who are we to intervene? How rude we are, unless you have the wisdom to see that. It's just sort of like, in other words, any action we do, we know this in ordinary life, any action we do, we know if there's the option of a really dire consequence, you won't do it. Would you agree with that? You know, if you've got two pills and one is cyanide and one is, you know, paracetamol, and I've got a terrible headache, but you don't know the difference, you will not risk my life. You'd rather I'd stay with my headache, and so would I. If you're not certain of the consequences of an action, you clearly wouldn't do it. So if it is true, as the Buddhist view is suggesting, as the Hindu view is suggesting after 3,000 years of this in the world, that consciousness continues, and that it could be a very, very, very suffering life, 1 billion times more suffering than present cancer, could be that, then you wouldn't want to take that risk. Is that not logical? Do you see my point? Mm-hmm. It's hard for us to consider. When it comes to our pets and all that, it's exactly the same. So it's not an easy call. Because if you do have confidence in karma, and you do have confidence your little pet, their mind will continue, then this is the whole point of all the advice in this book, is simply to do everything you can to ensure as best you can that the person who's dying, when they die, they'll get another decent rebirth. That's the bottom line here. That's all. That's the point. So there's many. So I mean, that's my example of those. It's not as if, oh, you're wicked, you shouldn't stop. You shouldn't kill your cat. It's not a question of should or shouldn't. It's a question of the consequences. You see my point? You've got to consider. This is what we're trying to consider here. So, you know, with those two friends I said with the dogs, both of them, the dogs were suffering and they were distressed, and both vets suggested they kill them, and they both decided they wouldn't, and, you know, and took them home and played mantras and just took care of them. In both cases, it worked out well, that they died peacefully at their own pace. Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't follow everyone's going to die peacefully, even if you don't kill them. You can't guarantee all this, but all we can do within all this, trying to take on board this hypothesis that consciousness continues, you do your best to ensure you do everything you can to help the person be peaceful at the time that their mind leaves the body. That's the idea, the general approach. You understand that? Yeah, that's the piece. That's the thing behind it. It's hard to know. I mean, it's really hard. We're not clairvoyant. We can't see the person's mind, you know? I mean, you don't know. All we can do, and also the other aspect of it is this. Given that everything I do, I create karma. So if I'm in charge of your death, you know, and I decide I'm going to kill you, and you even want me to, but forget about that. I don't want to have the karma of killing you. I don't mean to be mean, but I don't want to have the karma of killing you. And then you went from the frying pan into the fire and got a billion times more heavy rebirth. I don't want to harm you, and I don't want to harm myself. So you just kind of be more cautious, and we have to, and that's the thing that's factored in here, that we're not used to thinking in the materialist world. Do you understand? It's not that easy to know. It's not as if, oh, we'll let them suffer, I don't want to kill them. Are we communicating a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
what's your question?
The question is, with someone who is suffering, whether it's an animal or a person,
Yeah,
at death,
that's right.
That, I mean, to not assist them would be taken away. The suffering could be a vital part of their way.
Of course, all of that's part of it. I mean, if you have the view of karma, if you take the view of karma, if that's your view of the world, that you're using as your hypothesis for how to live your life and therefore how to help others, then that means the basic principle is every moment that is called happiness is the fruit of your past virtue, and every moment that's called suffering is the fruit of your non-virtue. It's just how it is. So every moment of suffering, therefore, is the finishing of a particular negative karma. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, every moment of suffering is the ending of a particular karma. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, your pussycat who's suffering, you don't want it to suffer, but the Lama Zopa would say that, you know, the pussycat, even another day of suffering might clean up enough karma for when it does die, it'll help it get and because you don't have the wisdom to know this, I mean, this is really subtle stuff, actually. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea has to be trying to want to do what is most beneficial for the cat or your grandma. And you do your best to take care of them, to love them, to support them, to be peaceful, to be virtuous, and then, you know, karma takes care. So, like, for example, pulling the plug, that in a sense is killing the person. But we've created this bizarre dilemma for ourselves in our culture, you know. So, I mean, there's something to say that makes sense that you don't let the person stay for 42 years. But you should do it wisely, not just drag the plug now. Make sure you get lamas who are skilled to do an observation. When is the best time? When is most beneficial? Do it nicely, have prayers playing. You know, you do it as well as you can. It's unfortunate that we have to do that because we've created these dilemmas for ourselves, you know. And all this business, I mean, we talk in the West about it's my right to kill myself. Well, of course it is. It is your right to kill yourself. Of course it is. Nobody else says it's your right. But of course, as His Holiness said, every action, like we know, like I just said, it is my right to take a pill that will kill me. But with a right, you know, a consequence will happen. So I should be aware of those consequences so I can make a wise choice. You can factor in the consequences. I want to take that pill, I'm going to risk 50% I'll die of agony by taking cyanide, or I'll die, I won't die, and I'll fix my headache. I've got to be prepared to take that risk, but it's a foolish risk, isn't it? And that, all I'm meaning is the equivalent of dying in agony is taking a suffering rebirth. It's a hard one to think because we're not used to thinking of reincarnation. And if we are thinking of reincarnation, we're not used to thinking that the karmic seeds for what life we get will be coming from our own mind. And because we're not clairvoyant, we can't see that. So therefore, we're not informed enough to make a decision. So in other words, as Dalai Lama says, compassion is not enough. We need wisdom. So then given that we don't have the wisdom, all we can do is do our best to support and love the pussy and love and support our grandma and give them the best conditions possible. And you pray that they die, they have a peaceful death. And it's not as if there's something more virtuous about dying peaceful, dying at your own pace than not dying at your own pace. It's only that we don't want to intervene because we don't have the wisdom to know what is best. That's the reason not to intervene in a radical way by killing your grandma, because you're not certain. That's the only reason. Just like you're not certain of that cyanide, you wouldn't give me any pill. It's being wise, you know, to have the wisdom. And if you don't have the wisdom, you don't do it. You only do what you can. In other words, a person could just had a car accident and you're not equipped, you have no wisdom of how to heal them. You can't try and cut, you can't try to do something radical like to cut their leg off because you don't know how to do it. So the poor person might have to die in agony. What can you do? You only know how to put a Band-Aid on. If you don't have the wisdom to know how to help, you can't just leap in and cross your fingers. That's the point, you see. It's not like, oh, well, let them die, I don't want to intervene. No, you do everything you can to help them be peaceful. And I think a big thing to factor in is our incredible attachment, especially when it comes to our pets. I'm sorry, we have so much attachment and we confuse that attachment with compassion and love. It's because we can't stand to see the pain. We panic, you know. And with respect to us, maybe we don't want to admit this, but pets cost more than regular people now. I mean, someone just telling me that she spent $5,200 on having a bloody tooth extraction for her cat. Excuse me. I don't mean cats are not valuable. So sometimes now animals are just too expensive, so we go get them killed, but we don't want to admit it to ourselves. So we can't have it both ways, attachment, and then the consequences of attachment are we have these fancy vets now doing these fancy, complicated operations on animals because we can't bear the thought of the animal dying, but suddenly it's going to cost us $5,000, so then we think, oh, I better put it down. I mean, we mightn't think we think that, but we've got to be really careful because we're so attached, you know, so much attachment, which is emotional. We think it's called love. It's not love. It's not wisdom. It's incredibly emotional, neurotic, I-based attachment. And then when it's inconvenient, goodbye. I'm sorry to be rude. Or you do like Barbara Streisand does, and so attached to a little pussycat or doggy woggy, she had clones made of her first dog, assuming it was going to be the same dog. You know, of course it's not. Another consciousness goes there. It looks like her previous dog, but it's not. Another dog. Probably cost her $100,000. I mean, to clone her doggy. Just talking in my usual polite way. So we keep our wits about us and see our doggy suffering, and you have the view of karma, and you love your dog. You see, I think dogs and cats, if they have some love and attention and you keep them secure, that'll calm their mind, even though the pain is bad. That'll calm. It's the mental. We conflate the mental and the physical suffering, but they're very, very different. So even yourself, if you know, I think this is really true. If you've got a terrible headache and you're on your own and you're mentally very suffering, but you have your beloved friend loving you and nurturing you, taking care of you and sympathizing with you, somehow you feel better. We have to distinguish between the mental anxiety and depression and the physical pain. And when your mind is more peaceful, the physical pain is less unbearable. We think they're the same. Can you hear my point, people? Your doggy for sure. You make your dog feel comfortable and love it and have mantras playing and secure and safe. Half their pain is gone. The mental, the paranoia and the fear, you know. You have to see the difference between the mental and the physical. This is why this is where we have to think about, you know, in our daily lives, this is a tremendously powerful point to remember. Like, you know, what happens is, because we're so attached to our bodies, let's say you just stub your toe, that second you get angry. We assume, well, of course I'm angry, I stubbed my toe, but that's completely irrational. Physical experience, sensory is one thing, mental consciousness is another. So basically the anger is an interpretation of that event, and the interpretation is, how dare it happen, I don't deserve it. That's the interpretation of anger. Well, if you change your interpretation, like, oh wow, that's karma right me, I'm so happy, the pain won't be so bad. This is a fact. I know in medical systems these days, people dealing with chronic pain, or whatever the right word is, there's so many of this approach. By changing your attitude towards it, by interpreting it differently, it becomes a different experience. So I'm not trying to think I'm so clever, but I've got ringing in the ears, right? Many people have, for years now. And I seem to be thinking it was getting worse. And sometimes, I remember when I went to an audiologist and she had a little questionnaire, do you feel like you're imprisoned by it? And definitely it's a feeling. I'd get panic stricken. I'd wake up in the night and all I could hear was the ringing. I'd panic and put the light on and go and do some work to distract myself, you know. So I realized I couldn't keep living like this because like you're scared of it, because it's there all the time. So I decided I had to change my mental attitude towards it. I didn't have a choice. It's not going to go away, you know. I had an acupuncture friend who said, if you can find a person who can fix ringing in the ears, they'll make hundreds of millions of dollars, you know. So I had to practice. I had to change my mind. So I practiced continuously, not paying attention to the ringing in the ears. And second, when I did notice it, I had to practice not having aversion to it. Aversion is anger, and aversion wants to push it away. Do you hear me? But you can't push it away, it won't go. So then there's this terrible tension. So I had to stop paying attention to it, and I had to stop pushing it away. So when I did notice it, bit nerve-wracking, you know, you're worried about it's going to sort of loom large again. I had to accept it as a good sound. And it's worked. Does that? We have no choice. So physical, sensory experiences are one thing. Mental is another. It's a huge point to understand. So with your dog who's physically suffering, yes, but it's mentally tortured because animals' minds are very, very full of ignorance, like a billion times more than us humans, which is very shocking for us to hear. We don't accept that. What do you mean? Why are you laughing? It's a really what? Which point?
Just, I was thinking of my dog and how if he's less conscious than I am, then he's in deep shit. You know, I mean.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go. I remember Lama Zopa saying one time, this is very shocking to us, we don't accept this, that if we could just for a moment have a direct experience of our dog's mind, we'd be so overwhelmed by the incredible suffering, we would never want to waste a single second of this precious human life. That does not appear to us. We don't think dogs are suffering at all, because we think we equate suffering with the physical. So of course, if someone's depressed, we know it's not physical. But with animals, we think it's the physical pain is bad, but it's the mental one as well. So if you can soften the mental one, that's what I'm saying about my own ears. The physical is not so bad. And the same with anybody else. You've got someone there loving you and stroking you and taking care of you and helping you. Plus give them a painkiller, it's okay. Then you manage, you can manage, you know, because we need, that's why supporting someone at the time of death is the most precious gift you can give them. More than amazing, you know. So we love what dies suddenly. I mean, this is going to happen, we can't help it. People in an accident, grandma dropped dead in her soup, you know, I mean, you can't help it. People die suddenly, just like that. They're awake and then they're dead. We know that. Then, of course, the thing is to keep your wits about you, because we panic, don't we? I remember my friend, the one who died in the hospital in Santa Cruz, and we sent off to the, the daughter and I were there with him. He didn't want to be kept alive. What happened was, and then that was the one I said we put the Gyuto monks on in the fridge, you know. But what happened was he had this very bad heart, and he got his wife to promise she wouldn't call the ambulance if he had a heart attack, because he wanted not to be resuscitated, because he would have died if he got this next heart attack. But she panicked and she did. So they took him to the hospital. So they had him wired up and he didn't want that. You could see he was very distressed. So and this is an example, so the daughter and I went there in the morning, we did all the prayers he wanted, but we had to pull the plug. So he didn't want to be kept alive, didn't want to be resuscitated. He wanted to have prayers done and allow him to die peacefully, but she panicked. And that's what happens. So you've got to prepare yourself for this. If someone, even if you want, of course you want to keep them alive. So do what you can, but meanwhile, if you know how to do the resuscitation or you have to call the ambulance, at least you say mantras in their ear while you're waiting for the ambulance. At least that. You understand? Whether they come back to life or not, but at least you're blessing their mind. I mean, of course, you've got to think about it. You're not used to thinking of mantras and that kind of thing as being beneficial. Of course, you've got to have confidence in this approach, you know. This helps the mind, attracts the Buddhas to be there, to support them and help their mind. That's what they say. Die suddenly, you know. And of course, you can't bring them back to life, then fine, you do what you have to do. And you do all the same kind of things. The same principle applies, all the same things, you know. Then, if your loved one's high realization is meditating at the time of death, well, basically, if your loved one's got high realizations, you leave them in peace, close the door and walk away. They know what they're doing. Leave them alone. That's the basic advice. So as I discussed in chapter 10, people with high tantric realizations can remain in meditation in the clear light conjoined with emptiness for as long as they wish. If your loved one is in meditation, you must not disturb them. The face of the meditator is very radiant, peaceful, even blissful. They look magnificent, totally different from ordinary people. So you shouldn't disturb them, you know. But if as Rinpoche says, if the meditation is not over, but and they can be meditating for days. But if the lords of the country demand that you stop, you know, then you have no choice but to move the body. You need to request the meditator. So you request the meditator end their meditation. So while you are requesting them, you offer music with symbols, or you do just kind of prayers and things, you know. And so Rinpoche says, in the case of some holy beings, such as Ling Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe, even though their bodies were moved several times, their meditation didn't cease and they were not disturbed. So as I mentioned in chapter 21, Lama Yeshe passed away at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, a wonderful hospital. Before Lama passed away, the nurses were watching intently throughout the night. The moment Lama's heart stopped, people rushed in with a defibrillator and wanted to try to get it started again. It was all very hectic in the room. I'd checked with Song Rinpoche, who earlier had come to be with Lama, but now was back in Switzerland, and he said to do everything possible to save Lama. The defibrillator is very strong. It pulls the body up violently. Lama opened his eyes for a moment, then his body fell back down. The doctor then said there was no hope. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning. So this was my first time dealing with someone passing away in the West. I had no experience. Apparently they usually take the body to the mortuary where they prepare it, but I didn't think we needed to do that. That's for ordinary people, not for those who are in meditation state like Lama. Anyway, Lama remained in meditation in a private room throughout the day. By the late afternoon, we couldn't stay any longer, so I asked Song Rinpoche what should be done to release Lama from his meditation. As I mentioned, Rinpoche advised me to play instruments, so I made 3 prostrations and rang a bell and requested Lama to stop. I also recited the prayer to be born in a pure land from the Vajrayogini practice, and I touched Lama's crown, that business of pulling like this. So of course Lama didn't need all this, as he had already achieved the clear light and the illusory body, all the high realizations. Apparently there was a candle, and one of the students present in the room said he saw a second flame leap up from the flame nearby. I didn't see it. I don't know what that means. They put Lama's holy body in a box, packed it in ice, and they took it to the mortuary. The box looked very dirty, and the body was covered by what looked to me like an animal skin. It was probably that black stuff, you know, like the Tibetan nomads would use. The next day, one of the students very slowly drove it 350 miles north to Lama Center near Boulder Creek, Vajrapani Institute. It was kept in the Gompa. And that's when all of us, we heard that Lama had died. It was 1984, March, before internet, so we had to ring up travel agents and buy physical tickets and things. So we went to California, lived there for 5 days at Vajrapani. It was very moving. So when they were preparing Lama's holy body, so about 200 of us came, and the Lama's body was just in this coffin in this room at Vajrapani. When I lived there, when I came in '94 to America for the first or the second time, and I was the SBC, and that was my room. The Lama's holy body was. It was the office. Now it's the office. So anyway, they had Lama in this coffin for those 5 days. We were doing practices day and night in the Gongpa. A couple hundred people came from around the world. So when they were preparing Lama's body for the burning offering puja at the top of the hill at Vajrapani, Song Rinpoche explained where to do it. They build this square kind of thing with bricks and then with 4 holes in it. And then they put this cone, and then they bring the holy body of the Lama. They dressed him up in special robes, put him in a chair, carried him up and put him in this thing, and then put wooden stuff and put this kind of cone-shaped white plaster with a hole in it for the smoke. And then they started the fire, and then we did this fire puja for several hours. I think it was Yamataka. Making many, many offerings and things, burning Lama's holy body. So when they were preparing Lama's body for the burning offering, it had been there for 5 days, remember? Losang had been one of the monks from the first Gelug monastery in Bodhanath in Nepal, and who was familiar with the rituals, reported to Song Rinpoche that even though the body had been lying in the coffin for many days, Lama's limbs were still very flexible. It was he who prepared the holy body in the Tibetan way, putting on the self-initiation costume with the crown, bell and vajra, and putting the legs and hands in the right position. He explained to Song Rinpoche that it was only when he moved Lama's legs that the white bodhicitta came out. So there's other way. I still haven't talked about the death process yet. I must get that done before we finish. But the last stage, once you've gone all the way to the clear light stage when there's no breath, all the subtle consciousness gone to the very subtle level, then when finally the mind does leave, it leaves from the heart. Everything comes to the heart chakra. I think after this chapter, I'll go into that one. So when so what there is at the heart chakra is this red drop and a white drop. They call them the red and white kundalini, or red and white drops. And these come from the parents at the time of conception. So when our mind ran like a magnet to our mother's fallopian tube, when she was in bed with our daddy, and a subtle level of the sperm from the father, the white drop they call it, and a subtle level of the egg from the mother, we call it the red drop. They are what that's what our consciousness conjoined with, and that was with part of the egg and the sperm, a subtle level. So that red and white drop, when they came together and our consciousness came from the past and joined it, we begin at the heart chakra. That's the very first place. That's the beginning of us. And then we gradually grow the fetus in the womb. The fetus gradually grows from there. And then at the time of death, everything has come down to the very subtle level here. And then when finally the time is actual death, is when the red and the white drop, which is containing your very subtle consciousness, when that splits open, your consciousness leaves and then comes out through the eyes, through the crown, or the anus, or the sex organ, or the mouth, depending on your rebirth, and leaves the body. And then you immediately reverse direction and go through the 8 stages in reverse, and you kind of wake up in the intermediate state, which is like a dream state. And then you get reborn. Then you take a rebirth from there, when your new mother and father hop into bed, twiddling your thumbs, waiting for them. Could be the lion, could be the dog, could be the ants. Not much sure you have to wait around for there, but if it's human, you might have to twiddle your thumbs for a while. So there's less humans than others. Yeah.
Why is it fire for the body? And
What?
why is the body in a pyre?
We're not discussing that yet. What are you saying?
Why is the body burned?
As opposed to what?
Buried, or like would cremation be the best for?
You can do what you like. It's just a certain practice. It's a certain kind of practice. You're offering. It's like an offering. You're offering all these things to the Buddha, and you're offering the body. You're offering there's a very elaborate kind of sadhana practice that you do. That ends up. They call it an offering. It's like an offering. It's called an offering. Yeah. Okay. That's all. So, okay. So the body of the meditator will still start. Okay. What's all this? Never mind that. Okay, so let's now talk about the 8 stages of death. I'll go through one step at a time. Find it first. All right. Really important in reading all this one. Okay. Eight stages of death. Where is it? Here we go. 43. 43. Okay. So, okay, I'll read a sort of summary first. What happens at death? So death occurs when the consciousness, the mind, separates from the body, even when the breath has stopped. That's what's called the outer breath. Or the brain doesn't function, or the heart doesn't beat. The person's not necessarily dead yet. There's still the inner breath. And for this to stop and the consciousness to leave the body can take anywhere from a few seconds to 3 days after the outer breath has ceased, or even longer for experienced meditators. So of course, many stories, aren't there, of people coming back to life. It's very common. So the components of a person, this is from the perspective of the Vajrayana, okay? So in order to better understand the process of death, which I described below in chapter 9, we'll go through it, it's helpful to understand what makes up a person. So there's one approach, this is from the sutras, the Buddha's teaching, called the 5 aggregates. Buddha explained that a person is made up of 5 kind of little 5 things. Form, which is really referring to our body. Feeling and discrimination, which are 2 of these crucial mental states, both of which are like these, what I called before, these sort of like the mechanics of the mind, not virtues or non-virtues, that play a major role in our creating of suffering, you know, and indeed of our happiness as well. They're given kind of status, form, feeling, discrimination. And then they call the aggregate of compounding aggregates. It's a very strange phrase. It's like the third one, the fourth one is like this grab bag of leftover bits and pieces. You see, the aggregates, it's just a way of describing the components of something. And there's 100 ways of describing the components of a person. One is body and mind, very simple, 2. Another is this 5, the way the Buddha, and there's logic to this. You have to study the teachings to know it. There's 5 ways of dividing into the form, which is the physical, feeling and discrimination, which is 2 of these many, what they call mental factors or states of mind that play this crucial role, so it gives them extra special status. And the fourth one is all the leftover bits and pieces, all the other parts of the mind and all the other parts of us that are impermanent. And the 5th one is called consciousness, which is mind in general. That's how they talk about it. And these play a role in terms of understanding deities, understanding the death process. It's got many levels of understanding about it. So the 5th one, consciousness, refers to the 6 sense consciousnesses and the 5 sense consciousnesses and the mental consciousness in general. The others are the mental state. So you have to keep remembering, we've got mental consciousness, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and we have sensory consciousness. Already, this is massively important to understand. Like example of when you stub your toe. The stubbing of the toe brings a physical experience. It's a sensory thing, isn't it? But the mental part is the anger or whatever it is that you decide, and they're separate. We tend to assume they come together. Well, of course I'm happy, you just smiled at me. You understand? Of course I'm angry, I just stubbed my toe. We don't question, but they're 2 events. And this gives us the liberation to realize we can change the interpretation. This is what practice is. We assume, because they come together so quickly, we assume they're the same. Your boyfriend is mean at you, you get upset. You assume it's normal. Of course I'm upset. We don't think we've got a choice. But one is sensory. Well, in that case, yes, sound. You know, your boyfriend saying rude words to you is a sensory experience. Your ear hears it. If you're deaf, you wouldn't hear it. But your mind hears the words and then interprets them. Because they're mean, then you get upset. So sensory and mental are it's fascinating. You listen to this. I always use the same example. You know, I'll pick up this and I will say, oh, that's a pretty cup. And I would say that, I do. That pretty looks very nice. These emus or whatever they are, not emus. I don't know who knows. Maybe somebody made up these long skinny birds. I don't know, but it looks nice. I like blue. So I say, that's a nice looking cup. Now, we of course assume, don't we, that my eyes are seeing a pretty cup. What's a load of rubbish? Because your sensory consciousness is, the word consciousness isn't meaning some special level of your mind. It's another word for mind. And they often refer to the individual consciousness, like eye consciousness, ear consciousness, touch consciousness. So there's 5 sense consciousnesses. That's all how we use the word, right? So here, my eye, the fact of the matter is the 5 sensory consciousnesses. And to spell it out, what that means is the part of your mind that is not physical, that depends upon the eyeball and all the various bits and pieces that enable you to have a cognition of your eye consciousness. So the consciousness part is mind. The eyeball doesn't see something. The eye consciousness, if it's a proper eyeball working, they work together and you have a cognition. So what is it that the senses cognize? Well, they're profoundly limited in their capacity for cognition. Eye consciousness can cognize precisely 2 things, shape and color. That's it. So then you have to ask the question, well, if my eye consciousness can only see shape and color, what part of my mind is cognizing what a pretty cup? So guess what? That's the mental consciousness. And so what happens? Quicker than Google, I'm not kidding, quicker than Google, the second my eyes land here, I don't have to go, oh, do I think that's nice? I mean, I have an opinion even if I'm wrong, you know. People often say, are you sure? I'll say, even if I'm wrong, I'm sure. So I'll say immediately, I think it's a pretty cup, you know. I'm quick to the judgment. So what's happening is this, my eyes go there and without a millisecond of space, quicker than Google, my mental consciousness is accessed. Well, as Lama Zopa says, that's where the workshop is. That's where all our trillions of memories, you know, on my iPhone, I think it's so repulsive. It's like they forced you to look at some pictures from the past, some new memories. It's so repulsive, I can't believe it. We live in memories, you know, you go to holidays and you have a memory. It's just too bizarre for words. Anyway, the point is, it's fascinating. There's 2 different ways, this is my way of putting it, that our mind works. One is the karmic one, which is like qualitative. You know, anger arises, you sow a certain karmic seed. But the other way the mind works is like bare bones, that there's nothing we've ever seen, heard, tasted, touched, smelt, or thought about that doesn't stay in the mind. Everything is stored in your memory. I don't mean the brain. And this is where you can have access to your memories of 40,000 lives ago. It's all there in the mind, just that we're as blind as bats and as deaf as posts and we can't see or hear it. But as you progress spiritually, you uncover, you expand your consciousness, you enable yourself to get clairvoyance, you see your past, you see your future, eventually, and the minds of others. All those are accessible to us. So everything is stored in our mind. So the little bit that's stored in my mind, even just from this life, you know, in a millisecond, I see that shape and color. Up come my opinions about that shape and color. So I'll say, oh, that's a pretty cup. So that's a pretty cup is an object of mental consciousness. Nothing to do with the eyes, you know. So if you think this way, it's very sobering. This is how we live in the entire world. We're seeing and hearing very basic things, but all we do is we live in opinions about it. And then we think the opinion is the truth. It's very sobering to hear this. We live in opinions. What's in my mental consciousness is a bunch of opinions. And of course, we believe our opinions are right, meaning they're the truth, meaning pretty cup is in the cup. Whereas Bob will see it and they'll say, no, it's an ugly cup, and then we'll have a war. I'm right. No, I'm right. You understand? I mean, that's very powerful. Mental is one thing and sensory is another. That gives us a space to know we can practice, change our interpretations. It's very powerful. Form, feeling, and the five aggregates, okay? Then we've got the 4 elements. earth, air, fire, water. I mean, these days we have a million elements, it's different now. It's all very old-fashioned for the modern world. Then we've got the tantric view of the gross, subtle, and extremely subtle body and mind. I explained that, you know. So the gross body is this one here. The subtle one is made up of the channels. So you've got these, they call them channels, the 72,000 subtle channels, like a nervous system throughout your entire body, head to toe. And they're all, all mixed together, channels. And you've got a main one here, starting about here. It goes all the way down and ends at the penis, tip of the penis for the boys, and at the cervix for the girls. It's called the central channel. Then you've got two side channels that start here and then go on up and then go all the way down either side and end in the same place. And then you have all the others all together. Then you have these, then the next part they call them chakras. Channels, and when they've got, no, so next is the wind energies. So the physical world is the four elements. The physical world, based on our karma, is a configuration of the various four elements, and that's it, you know. So at the subtle level, you've got these wind energies, the winds, prana, winds going through all these channels, and the winds, like I said, it's not neuroscience, are inextricably linked to all our thousands of mental states. So like I said, as Lama Zopa says, you just have an angry thought that immediately programs the mind with anger, but also pollutes the winds, those particular wind energies, and then that eventually, as you get sick, you produce, it becomes illness. It impacts upon the gross body. And then in long term, eventually impacts upon the external elements, and then you get born in a very polluted environment. So even the external world is the long-term result of the individual and collective karmas of all the sentient beings who experience it. Don't need creating, we create ourselves. So the wind energies, and then connected to them, this is the physical, and then you've got these other physical components called the red and the white drops. They stay at the heart, but also there's a, Rosa doesn't say it here, but they also, you hear sometimes in teachings, there's a predominance of these different liquid energies, kind of liquid energies. The white one predominates here, at the crown chakra, and it's the source of the ability of the human body to experience pleasure. And then here is a predominance of the red one, and this is the source of the capacity of the human mind to experience heat. So there's the subtle body is made of the winds, the channels coursing in the channels, the winds coursing in those winds, and then the red and white kundalini. And there are different spots. These channels are all kind of constricted at certain places, and these are called chakras. There's nothing fancy about chakras. They're a hassle, because all the winds are blocked there. Blocked meaning they're all constricted together. So here, 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 and then about a bit below the navel, and then 3 along the male organ, and internally in the central channel for the female. These different chakras they call them. Block, where the channels. So why, when they say blocked, the point of this is this. What we're trying to do with meditation, with concentration, what the yogis are trying to do is by calming the mind. When you calm the mind down, that calms the wind energies down. When the mind gets very subtle, then all the winds leave all the side channels and all come into the central channel. But why it doesn't go easily there is because the winds are blocked from coming into the central channel from these various constrictions, you know. It's quite technical. As Lama actually says, Tantra is very technical. And the reason you want everything to come into the central channel and eventually to the heart chakra is because that's when the mind is most subtle. So when our mind is berserk and conceptual, that's why you can't get to sleep sometimes. Your mind's just berserk and you can't get, the wind energies are berserk and your mind's berserk and you just can't get to sleep. Because when you go to sleep, it's exactly the same process as when you die, exactly the same, and when you meditate. All the grosser wind energies that come along with your grosser states of mind, they all come into the central channel, and that's when you go to sleep. Because the grosser levels of mind are gone with the winds and they go into the central channel. And that's what you're trying to do. The meditators are trying to do that, be in control of it. And then they're ready for death when it happens naturally. So there's the gross consciousness and the gross body that it's conjoined with, the sensory. Then you've got the subtle consciousness, which is the mental states, all conjoined with these wind energies in all your different channels. And then the chakras and the red and white drops. And then you've got, okay, so while we are alive, Lama Zopa talks about this, while we're alive, the knots at the chakras prevent the winds from entering into and flowing in the central channel. Otherwise, these various winds and the states of mind associated with them would all dissolve into the indestructible drop at the heart chakra, at which point our extremely subtle consciousness, the mind of clear light, would manifest. And with it, we could meditate on emptiness and thus free ourselves from all the delusions, eventually becoming enlightened. So we want the winds, we want the chakras to open, so your winds go in, so your mind can go in, so it can go to the subtle level. But that's what the struggle is. Most of us aren't able to do that. But it happens naturally when you go to sleep, and naturally when you die. We're not in charge of it, we just snore, we are not aware. So we can't utilize it. So throughout their lives, the great meditators train their minds to do this. Lama Yeshe, for example, in his daily tantric practice, was able to experience the various visions of the dissolution process, we'll go through this, that occur naturally at death. In other words, he didn't need to wait until death to experience them. Lama was able to open the chakras, causing the winds to enter into and flow in the central channel and dissolve at the heart chakra, and thus could meditate on the clear light. Therefore, at the time of death, great yogis can remain in meditation in the clear light as long as they like, which is what happened with Lama. So the process of death occurs in 8 stages, which I explain in chapter 9, and is experienced by those who have bodies constituted from the sperm of the father and the egg of the mother, human beings and some animals. During the first 4 stages, we experience the gradual dissolution of the 22 of the 25 components. We'll go through these. 4 of the 5 aggregates, 4 of the 5 types of wisdom, the 4 elements, 5 of the 6 sense bases, and the 5 inner sense objects. The breath has stopped by the end of the 4th stage, and by then, gross consciousness, the 5 sense consciousnesses, have ceased. During the 5th, 6th, and 7th stages, subtle consciousness, which is our mental states, gradually dissolve. Some are more subtle than others, which includes the 80, what they call the 80 superstitions. Superstitions is a very funny word. It seems very odd to us. Low battery, Bob. 9%. What was I saying? What was I about to say?
Superstitions.
What did I say?
Superstition.
Thank you, superstitions, yeah. Lama would often use this, and it's a very weird word, and they use it very specifically for these particular levels of the delusions that cease at the time of death. But actually, it's a great word. You see, this is what we understand the neurotic states of mind, the delusions, the misconceptions, the disturbing emotions, the afflictions, all these words. One of their functions, their key function, is that they exaggerate, they embellish. As Lama Zopa says, all the delusions decorate on top of what is there, layers upon layers of characteristics that aren't there. So attachment, when you see the chocolate cake, the attachment in your mind decorates on top of the bare bones chocolate cake, delicious chocolate cake. And we think the deliciousness is part of the cake, as if you put a spoonful of deliciousness along with the chocolate. No, deliciousness comes from your own mind. It's a function of attachment. So when you hate chocolate cake, the ugliness is exaggerated, and it comes from your anger, your aversion. So delusions decorate, embellish, exaggerate, distort. So then superstition, you'd say, if you have a superstition, you believe in something that doesn't exist, don't you? Well, guess what? Attachment is believing in delicious cake. That's a superstition. And actually, it's surprising to us, but they are all superstitions. It's their nature. You get the point? It's very logical. We just don't use it like that, that's all. But Lama would use it a lot. Now I've lost my page. What happened to it? Gone right back to page 1. Oh dear. Where was I? I forget where I was. Oh God. I can't remember. What's this? Death is what the yogis, no, not that one. So here we go. So the 80 superstitions, that's all part of the process. So the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th, 6th, and 7th stages of death. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's go through the 8 stages, okay? It's a bit more summary, it's still more summary. No, okay. It's okay, no, summary, let's just see the summary. Okay, 12 links, no, not that one. We'll go to the 8 stages now, okay. I'll go to each of the 5 components at each of the stages. So, even though we all go through the 8 stages at the time of death, what I describe here is a gradual death. As for how long the process takes, it's hard to say. In general, as I mentioned below, from the time that the first of the 8 stages has occurred, it can be a couple of hours before the breathing stops. But it can be much quicker, you know. However, those who die violently or suddenly go through the stages very quickly. And sometimes in a violent death, the mind could leave the body immediately and go straight to the intermediate state. That's possible. As I mentioned, and as we will see below in the chapters 10 and 24, the great meditators, those who have deeply familiarized themselves with these stages in meditation during their lives, can recognize the stages of death as they occur and can meditate on emptiness throughout. But ordinary people don't recognize them. We go through these stages every time we sleep too, but we don't recognize them. It's like when you're looking at a person, let's say, but your mind is concentrating on another object, a sound, for example, or you're thinking of something else. And even though the person is in front of you, you simply don't see them. It's the same at death. We don't recognize the visions that occur at each stage of this evolution because of the pollution of our ignorance and our uncontrolled mind. Even though we might know these stages intellectually, not having trained our minds in the meditation techniques during our lifetime and not having created enough virtuous karma or purified our minds, we can't recognize these experiences as they occur. But it's possible. It's good to help your loved one meditate on these stages during the months and weeks before death. It's one of the practices, you know, if they're Buddhists. They can also become familiar with these stages as they go to sleep. So anyway, if they have a highest tantra practice, you can guide them through the stages of meditation when you help them with their daily practices. So apparently at the time of death of my past life as the Laudo Lama, I don't remember this, a disciple was there to receive initiation, and they were discussing the death evolution. It seems that the death process started while they were having this discussion. As I mentioned in chapter 7, 25 components dissolve during those 8 stages. The 5 aggregates, the 4 wisdoms, the 4 elements, the 6 sense bases, and the 5 inner sense objects. Okay, gross consciousness, first stage. First, the vision of a mirage. So these 8 stages are all labeled in terms of what they refer to as a particular vision. There's something in the mind that arises as a result of that thing happening, but most of us don't see these. So each of these, the names, mirage, smoke, fire sparks, flame, etc., are the signs. These are indicators or signs of each stage that you're at that the great yogis can see actually, but if we're meditating, we pretend we see them. We kind of program our mind to become familiar with these 8 stages. So the first one is the vision of a mirage. So this is the first one, each one. The aggregate of form dissolves, your body becomes thinner and your limbs become loose and unmanageable, like when you're really tired. It's the same process when you go to sleep, you see. As the mirror-like, so these wisdoms sound a bit mystical, but they're just a capacity of the mind to experience things. It's describing in a certain way. So here, this one of the 5 wisdoms, they refer to it as the wisdom-like, mirror-like wisdom. These wisdoms are labeled according to the function of the senses. It's your ability to see many things at once. So right now, when you're wide awake and wide awake and wound up like we are now, you look around the room, or even if you don't look around, you can see a million things, super clear, isn't it? You can distinguish them. But when you start to get tired, I'm talking to Bob and my eyes are glazing over, aren't they? Like you can't hardly see anything. Because the eye element the eye sense starts to go. This wisdom, you start to get things are unclear, starts to go. The body starts to get thinner. It's just as a sleep. This is what happens at death too. All this is the first stage. And the fourth thing the other thing at the first stage, the earth element absolves, and you feel like you're sinking. I told you that experience I had, and your eye consciousness, the eye sense base, they say. Never mind that your eyes start to feel vague, you know. So these 5 things. They talk about an inner form dissolving. Well, never mind that one. We'll keep it simple. So at this point, you have a vision of what they call a mirage, which really is like a mirage, isn't it? Is the interplay of earth and water, isn't it? So the earth element is now ceasing, so it's giving rise now for the water element to prevail. Do you understand? So this first stage is known as and these 5 things occur, and it's the vision of the mirage. So of course this happens when we go to sleep, but who's aware? Nobody. Second one, the vision of smoke. So now the aggregate of feeling, either pleasant, unpleasant, or indifferent, remember? You can no longer experience the 3 kinds of feelings, pleasure, pain, and indifference. And then coming along with is the wisdom of equanimity, which sees these 3 as having the same nature. This dissolves. The water element ceases. The liquids in your body begin to dry up, and your ear consciousness starts to go. I didn't hear the last 10 seconds of what he said, you know? Your energies are absorbing, deconstructing, ceasing to function, all the bits and pieces. Clearly, these bits and pieces aren't according to the modern medical, you know, it's a different model. And you have a vision of smoke. And I think it's more like steamy, the interplay of water and fire, which is the next one. Like steamy, smoky, they call it smoky. So now, at this point, they say, your dying thoughts activate the karmic seed that determines your next rebirth. So as Courtin Rinpoche says in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, your dying thoughts activate the karma that will be the cause of your next rebirth. And the activators of this throwing karma are the 8th and 9th links, craving and grasping, discussed in the previous chapter. If we've got time, we'll go through that as well. So Rinpoche says this takes place while the mind is still active and you can still recall virtue or be reminded of it by other people. This is about at the 2nd and 3rd stages. You've still got your wits about you a little bit. At this point, it is so important to be able to control the arising of the disturbing thoughts by remembering the guru, the teachings, renunciation, karma, emptiness, loving kindness, whatever, which gives us the chance to be born in a Buddha's pure land or a human rebirth. So if our last gross thoughts, and these are the gross thoughts now, are virtuous, the throwing karma will be virtuous. If the last gross thoughts are non-virtuous, the throwing karma will be non-virtuous. The karmic seed that ripens is whichever is heavier, more strongly habitual, which, as I mentioned, could have been planted hundreds, if even millions of lifetimes ago. If they're equal, the seed that was planted first will be the one that ripens. So if we die with anger, let's say, or strong attachment to our life, our loved ones, and so on, our birth will only be in the lower realms, nowhere else. Generally, attachment causes rebirth as a hungry ghost, ignorance causes rebirth as an animal, and anger as a hell being. In these lower realms, we experience unimaginable suffering for an incredibly long time. So at this point, so compared to this, the suffering of the human realm is nothing. At this point, 5 things can occur if we're dying with non-virtuous thoughts, though not all 5 will necessarily happen. You're soiling yourself, your arms and legs are thrashing about, screaming, blood coming out of your ear, nose and mouth, eyes rolling up. And if we've created very heavy negative karma, all 5 will happen. That's what happened. I mentioned to you my nun friend in Australia who sits with the dying. This guy had all of this. But then he calmed down and he died peacefully. So he had like an experience, probably like kind of purifying some hell realm karma, you know. And why that happens is because a negative seed was triggered. The grasping. At that time, there's 2 processes going on here. There's the 8 stages, but also there's a series of the 12 links of dependent arising. So at this point, you know, what's happening about this point is that this craving, the 7th link, which is very strong attachment, is very powerful, and you're clinging and it's holding on to this life. Because one of the functions of attachment is you don't want to let go of something. Another function of attachment is looking forward to something, but here you're holding on to something. This eye, this body, you know, very powerful. And then grasping comes, which is even more powerful attachment. And that's the trigger that triggers the karmic seed, which is number 2 of the links that will determine your next birth. And if the mind is predominantly non-virtuous at that point, extra freaking out, then it'll trigger a negative seed, which means your death will be like that. If it triggers a positive seed, your death will be peaceful. That's how they talk. That's why you don't know when your cat is going to die, so you keep it peaceful and happy, having, virtuous, peaceful, secure, loving it, hearing mantras. At least you can ensure at any moment it can die peacefully when it decides to die, or when death comes, So on the other hand, dying with a virtuous mind causes us to have a peaceful and happy death. In fact, if we're like the best spiritual practitioners, we will be joyful at the time of death, and we'll have a sense of passing through darkness into light. That's how they say. They say the fearful one is like feeling you're moving from light into darkness. It's interesting. That friend of mine who fell off the roof and died in his wife's arms, she said he was radiant, blissfully happy. Because as your mind's getting more subtle, it's like you're seeing your future, you're seeing your happy rebirth or something. Yeah. So I mentioned that guy, so here Roger mentions this. Nevertheless, it's possible that someone can have a terrible experience before they stop breathing. They can be peaceful at the actual time of death, which would cause karma to be activated for them to go to a pure land. In other words, these experiences can be a good sign, the finishing of some heavy negative karma. This happened to one old Lama from Ganden Monastery, a very good Lama who was very sick. As he was passing away, his body became very hot, unbelievably hot. Then he died very peacefully and apparently went to a pure land. The vision of fire sparks, the third one. So as the aggregate of discrimination dissolves, you can no longer recognize your friends and relatives. So also the wisdom of discrimination, they seem a bit similar. I mean, by this point, the previous one, you can't tell the difference between pleasure, pain, and indifference. Now, at this point, you look around and there's your ugly uncle on this side and your beloved boyfriend on that side. You can't tell the difference. You're losing the plot gradually, And the fire element ceases and the heat begins to gradually cease. So the heat leaves the body either from the crown first or from your feet first. And if it leaves from your crown first, you're in big trouble. Because that means you're going to go to a low realm. And if your feet get cool first, that's good. Because you can't control all this, Just they're explaining it, that's all. So maybe you should put heat up. It's good to keep your feet cool first. But if your head gets cold first, that's a problem, because it means your conscience is going to leave through the anus of the sex organ. You don't want that. Maybe put a hot water bottle on the crown. I'm just joking. Keep it all toasty. Okay. As the five elements dissolve, the body's heat gradually dissolves, and then also your nose consciousness ceases. Can't smell anything. It's more subtle. So it's grosser to the subtlest, isn't it? Earth, water, fire. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness. Now, how the heat leaves, I just told you that one, how the heat leaves the body, yeah. So the fourth one, the vision of a flame. So the aggregate compounding aggregates dissolve and you no longer move your body, and your awareness of worldly activities. And also this wisdom, kind of called the all-accomplishing wisdom. So now by this point, you hear words and you can't work anything out. You don't even know who you are anymore. You're really losing the plot by this point. The tongue sense space ceases. And as Geshe Rabten says, I love this, that tongue, apparently it turns blue at the root and gets short. And it says that tongue that spent its life gossiping is now useless. And then the breath stops. So all these different things, the five at each stage cease, these components of a person. And by this point, the West says you're ready for the body bang. And that's when they keep you plugged in now if they want your organs, So the outer breath and the five senses have now stopped. So the outer breath and the gross consciousness have now ceased. As I mentioned, chapter 7, so far, 22 of the 25 components have ceased. 4 of the 5 aggregates, 4 of the 5 types of wisdom, the 4 elements, 5 of the sense bases, and the 5 inner sense. I didn't distinguish between those two. During the 5th, 6th, and 7th, subtle consciousness, your mental states, and some are grosser than others, and they all dissolve in their order, cease functioning. Because you can see that with dreams. Your sensory consciousness is not awake, but your mental consciousness is. That's your subtle, that's a subtle level. Your mental states are more subtle. So now you get to, at this point, you're at the subtle consciousness. Now the fifth vision, the white vision. So that now they talk about these 80 superstitions. It's just a series of these mental states. And there's no list here, but there are books in which they are listed. All the different mental states cease. You know, the first group. So the winds in the right and left channels. So by now, the winds and your states of mind connected, you know, the growth are all coming to the central channel by now. So that's what happens when you go to sleep. So now from here down and to up, they gradually start to come, you know, the subtle levels of mind start to cease. And as Rinpoche says, oh no, sorry. The winds in the right and left channels, these two here, move up and open the head chakra, loosening the knots there, and then enter the central channel. This causes the white bodhicitta at the crown to melt and flow down the central channel to the heart. Now you experience the white vision, the mind of white appearance, like very bright moonlight in autumn, or like the almost white sky caused by the light of the rising moon when everything is covered with snow. Whereas, yeah, so now it's very quiet. Then the next one is the red vision. The next 40 of the 80 superstitions dissolve. The winds in the right and left channel now move down and open the sex and navel chakras, loosening the knots there and enter the central channel. This causes the red bodhicitta at the navel to shoot up the central channel to the heart chakra. And now you experience the red vision, the mind of red increase. It's like the clear red sky just before the dawn breaks, or like a copper red reflection in the sky. It's perfectly still. 7, so your mind's getting ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle. The dark vision, the final 7 of the 80 superstitions dissolve. The red and white bodhicitta meet at the heart. The white from the down, red from the up, they come to the heart chakra in the indestructible drop in the central channel with its red and white halves. They are what come from your mummy and daddy, that conception. So now you experience the dark vision, the mind of dark appearance. It's as if you're fallen to darkness, or like a dark and empty sky, or being in a dark room. At the beginning of this vision, you have some awareness and recognize an appearance of darkness, but then you become unconscious. This is some experience of the meditators, okay? So now the extremely subtle consciousness. 8, the clear light vision. So now the clear light vision appears. This is the subtlest level of mind, occurring only after all the grosser consciousnesses have ceased. It's like an autumn dawn when the sky is so clear, no clouds, no dust. It is not bright like at noon, not red and not dark. Nothing else appears because all your conceptuality and sensory have now ceased. The grosser levels. The yogis continue to meditate at this point and can stay as long as they like. For ordinary people who have no awareness of what's happening, it could still be 3 days before your mind leaves the body. So how the mind leaves the body at the time of death. So death occurs when the indestructible drop of your red and your white from your mummy and daddy split open, and the extremely subtle mind and wind leave your heart chakra in the central channel, and depending on which rebirth you'll take, exit the gross body at one point or another. So like I said, if it exits through the crown chakra, it's a sign you'll go to a pure land, or will be going to a pure land. If it exits through the eyes, it's a human. Mouth, a spirit. So don't kiss your loved one, please, because it'll just cause their mind to go out there and get born as a hungry ghost. Leave them in peace. Your sex organ and your anus is the hells and the spirits, the hells and the hell and the animals. Hungry ghost is from the mouth here. Animals from the sex organ. The consciousness can also leave from the navel, the ears, or the nose. It can also leave from midway through the eyebrows. He's not sure how though. So signs of death. Okay, so when the mind leaves the body of a man, the white bodhicitta continues down the central channel and leaves through the sex organ, and the red continues up and leaves through the nostril. And in a woman, it's the opposite. So this is one sign that you can. It's hard to see something, but you can see it. Like with Lama Zopa, apparently it happened very clearly. Big from the nose, very strong, evident, you know. It's a sign the mind has left the body, the actual death. So then the intermediate state. So the moment the indestructible drop splits open, your very subtle consciousness leaves from the heart chakra and becomes the intermediate state being. Right there, even before your mind's left your body. That second, you're now an intermediate state being, and then the extremely subtle wind then that is the vehicle of the extremely subtle consciousness becomes the condition for the intermediate state's mind. Never mind that. So, and you can see the world, you can see the world you just left, your relatives and your dead body, but the karma is finished. So you don't recognize any of it and you have no desire to go back. I've heard different views about this. That's what Rinpoche says. Karma's over. You don't care. Who's that person over there? You know, you so I taxed them a minute ago, now you couldn't even know who they are. So then you go through the 8 stages in reverse order, very quickly. And that's exactly what happens in sleep. You go to the very subtle mind, you go completely unconscious, and then you wake up into a dream. It's sort of a little wake up, you know, it's the same here, intermediate state. And you take a body, like a subtle shape of intermediate state. And this subtle body is similar in appearance to the body of your next life. Because we create these causes to have these bodies, you know, it's our actions. But if you're going to get born a lion, your mind created the cause by a certain kind of causes to become a lion, to have a lion body, that kind of aggression, whatever it is, and you run then eventually, you run like a magnet to the lion's womb. You run like a magnet when the time comes to get reborn. So the longest time spent in the intermediate state is 49 days. But if after 7 days the rebirth hasn't happened yet, you'll experience like what's called a small death in the intermediate state, taking your body in the intermediate state for another 7 days. So if your mind is not clouded by delusions, the intermediate state is a wonderful experience. Like dreams can be very pleasant, can't they? Dreams can also be nightmares, can't they? Depends on the karma, same here. And for the great yogis, it's either possible to get enlightened at the time of death, or if they can, in the intermediate state. Lama Zopa Rinpoche got enlightened in the intermediate state, apparently. So if you've got negativity prevailing, the intermediate state's terrible. There's so much fear as you experience karmically created visions, feeling you're pressed down by the earth, stuck in big cracks, tossed by a sea wave, consumed in a whirlpool of a great fire. You suffer because of not recognizing these as visions. Well, that's how we are in daily life. Everything freaks us out, you know. If we didn't have delusions, we wouldn't be panic-stricken. We'd handle it. Even if you're destined for the lower realms, things can change. So however, even if you have created much negative karma and are destined from the lower realms, special practices that can be performed by lamas can influence you in the intermediate state and cause you to take a favorable rebirth. Different things, okay? So rebirth as a human. This is really hilarious. Freud would have loved this. As I mentioned, the experience of being born is similar to the experience of waking up, but whether we wake up to a pleasant day or a violent storm is another matter. If we're reborn in the lower realms, the awakening will be a terrible one. So if from the intermediate state you'll be taken birth as a human, you'll see your future parents in sexual union. And if you're going to be born as a male, you'll be attracted to the mother and have aversion for the father, and the other way around for the other. So because of this habit, the karmic imprint of attachment to sexual union, the intermediate state being will want to embrace, have sexual intercourse with the one it's attracted to. And that's what drives, see, attachment energy is what drives us. We don't get that. It's not how we think, but attachment is kind of the part that moves you all the time. You see people walking, talking, sitting down, going here. It's attachment energy. This drives, it's like a motor that drives us. So this entire realm is driven by the energy of attachment. And this is exact example. Attachment is what drives you to your new parents. And you want to have sex with your daddy if you're going to be born a girl. I mean, it sounds so shocking, but it makes sense. Attachment, because we can see the most primordial attachment, the most tremendous attachment is what we call sexual attachment. Don't forget the word sexual. Don't put special trip on it. It's just a very strong attachment, that's all. It's just a very strong attachment. That's all it is. It's just a strong attachment in the mind that drives you. And when you get there, all you see is the sex organ, you get really annoyed, then the aversion arises, and then you zap into the egg and sperm. I mean, that's how you get conceived. It ain't a sacrament, I promise you. It is not a special gift. It's horrible. Because of that, So it's terrible, I know. So, you know, when you get there, you're dying to have sex, you don't see you just see the sex organs, which causes anger to arise. And this anger becomes the condition for the intermediate state to die and its mind to enter the mother's body. It is easy to see how ordinary birth is caused by delusions and karma. And that's when you get reborn, people. Not fun, is it? It's hard work, actually. I mean, all this intensity. We've got to die and go through all of this just to get another body. I mean, how inconvenient, you know? We just get a new one quickly, it'd be much easier. Which is, of course, what the holy beings can do. So, any questions, please? It's all pretty esoteric if we haven't heard it before. I agree.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I'm with
Yeah,
it.
go.
What about linear?
A bit louder, darling.
Like linearage, like time is time
Linear?
linear?
Sorry.
Like if I die right now. And
I can't hear you so well, sweetheart. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. If I die right now, today,
Yeah.
and it takes 30 years to be reborn.
It'll never take more than it never takes that long. You never spend more than 7 weeks in the bardo, ever.
would
Never.
that be like-
Never more than 49 days.
But then after 7 weeks, it would be like, still 2024 then.
What?
I'd still be reborn in 2024
2024, what?
this year. It's linear. right?
Oh, well, I mean, okay, there's relative reality, conventional reality, and there's ultimate. And ultimate is emptiness. But everything else is relative reality. So if we all know there's present and past and future, don't we? Well, why would you think that's all different? It's just that's a relative reality. We can all prove it. Past is the label we give to what happened before. Present is what we label now, and future is what hasn't yet come. Well, that's a relative reality, isn't it? Is that a relative reality that you accept? So a past life is before, a present life is now, and a future life is a future one. So it's the same thing. Don't complicate it.
Okay.
Do you see my point? Yeah.
This question is posed to Venerable Steve Carlier, and it's sort of similar to that, where, but the 7 days by what reckoning? 7 days on
Oh,
Earth.
human. This is human timing.
Yeah, but the Bardo exists. On
Human time.
Yeah, but doesn't the Bardo exist in a different plane?
No, don't think
No.
that way. No, it's just reality. It's just another level of reality. No, it doesn't. What do you mean? Another plane? Yeah, in so far as your dream mind is a very different one from the grosser mind. It's the same with the Bardo.
Yeah, but like a day on Mars is different than
What?
a day on Mars, or say a different plane for.
No,
Existence.
the experience of time. You put it this way. Okay, we at the moment are using our human experience of time to judge all this. This is all from the human perspective. But if you talk about the Pure Lands or then the hells, but that's what's the interesting point. My feeling is, I don't know, my feeling is, they say the hells last for eons, but maybe it's the experience of eons. Let me tell you an interesting story. I remember one time, years ago, someone pointed out some American doctor who interviews his patients and who had discovered all these awful hell-like out-of-body experiences, not like white light, you know. So a couple of them one was very fascinating. It was one fellow in hospital waiting for his heart operation, and he was really anxious and worried about it. And suddenly he was found himself out of bed, standing next to his wife, who was at the bed, and he's talking to her, and he got annoyed with her because she didn't answer. And he looked at the bed, and he saw a body there, and he vaguely realized was his body. So the thing is, by the way, when you have these experiences, you're not leaving your body, but it's of a vision of this viewer. Because if you'd left your body, you're dead. Your mind is there, but the subtle mind has these experiences. People have floating above their heads, all the dreams as if you're flying around, but your mind's in your body. It's just karmic visions. So then he hears a voice in the corridor. Come on, John, come on. He's, oh, good, I'm going to my operation. So he went out and he went along this corridor. And the way he said it was, it took longer than walking from here to Alaska. Even if here was Canada. So he's saying the experience of it was a long, long time. It was probably a second of it, or a minute in human terms. That to me was a very interesting concept. It took from here to the experience of time, and that's all that matters. Whether it's a second on your watch or it feels like an eon, the feel like an eon is real. And we all know when you've got incredible pain, it seems to last forever. And when you experience pleasure, you're terrified it's going to end so quickly and you don't want to go, you know. So I think that's really evident. Anyway, the rest of the story, out of interest, they were nice to him, and then he said, and then they started being mean to him. Oh, I can't my sneeze. Okay. Then he said, They started being mean to him and rip his flesh and hate him and be violent. It was horrifying. And then they left him. And he said, then I was left in absolute darkness. And he said, and in despair, the likes of which I'd never known, and I didn't know what to do. So he said, well, I thought I'd better pray. But he didn't remember any prayers. He tried our Father who art in heaven, couldn't go any further. Oh, tried the Lord is my shepherd, he couldn't go any further, you know. So then he just called out, Jesus, help me. And a light, way over there, tiny light came. And it was more and more brilliant. It was Jesus, and more radiant, blissful, incredible, coming, completely healed his body. He was in complete bliss. And of course, he wanted to go with Jesus. And Jesus says, no, go back and serve me. And then you would, wouldn't you? And he did. I find that very fascinating. So the fact of the matter is, it's karmic appearance. He called it Jesus. Imagine if some green lady came, he would have got a big shock. You get my point? It's karmic appearance, whatever you're familiar with, you know. But the walking along here took as long as walking from here to Alaska. That's really helpful. I think it's like that, you know. They say in the God realm, it's like 500 human years is a morning or something. I don't understand, but whatever, you know, you understand. So, yeah. That's it for that. Any questions, people? Any questions? So we went through all different things, went through the different stages, what to do if your loved one dies at home, and give the organs, blah, blah, blah. So now we've got, you know, what to do after the person's dead. Offer their organs, okay, that one we did. And loved one, you know, realizations, blah, blah. So now make sure the mind has left the body before you move it. So there's different ways to check, isn't there? One is, one is no longer warm at the heart. The other is the white or the red drops come out. The other is the body smells. It's a fairly evident one. Another one, very simple, is if you press the flesh and it doesn't come back. That shows the person's dead. You can try that one. The head moves. That's a very interesting one. I've heard that before. That's when the head, and the conscious leaves. The head can move slightly, which means the conscious left through the head, you know. So then you tug there or pull there and then write that. And also rigor mortis, it's possible that there could be a sign of rigor mortis after the breath has stopped, but before the mind leaves the body. If so, and after having checked using the above methods, you think the mind is still there, it's recommended to make the certain practice you can do near the body. It's all there in the book. So now practice to do after the mind has left the body. So some of the crucial ones. So first of all, how to prepare your loved one's body for cremation or burial. They don't have, they don't have memorial services. So, you can just do your own trip here. But first of all, okay, this is like, what's this one? Yeah, well, how to prepare the body first. Okay, prepare the body. So there's different things you do. So get one of the practices is sprinkle blessed seeds, water, or so forth on your loved one's body. So you get some sesame or mustard seeds, or talcum powder, water, perfume, or something you can easily sprinkle. Now you recite the Namgyal mantra, certain mantras, or any other mantra, and having blessed your breath with the recitation, you blow on the seeds or the water, and now you can sprinkle it over the body. Rita says, I usually keep a big packet of mustard seeds or baby powder close by. Every day after I've chanted thousands of various mantras, I blow on the powder or seeds to bless them. And I use them wherever I see dead insects or animals, or for people who have died. You could also do this. We can send the blessed seeds to other people. And the Namgyal mantra is especially powerful for purification of negative karma. Yeah, so things like that. Bless your loved one's body with written mantras. So, for example, Courtin Central Rinpoche in Calm, they have long rolls of mantras. So they roll the body in the rolls of mantras with the mantra facing down, touching the body. You do that. And if you're going to bury the body, you get a bit of ashes or hair or nails. You keep that aside. And if you're going to cremate, you keep a bit of the ashes, because then there's a really good practice, which I really recommends. Then there's a funeral service. You can offer lights, flowers, recite mantras. You can we give talks, don't we? Dedicate with the King of Prayers, all that kind of thing. So he talks about Lama Yeshe's funeral, I mentioned that. So this is what so here is in chapter 26, you'll have your loved one's body cremated. So don't forget to keep some ashes or some hair or nails. You can have them blessed with the Jangwa practice. We'll discuss that in a minute. This is what I did with all of Lama Yeshe's relics after the burning offering puja at Vajrapani Institute. I took them to Switzerland and asked Song Rinpoche to bless them with the Jangwa ceremony. Of course, Lama didn't need this because he had already had realizations. So the relics were divided up and given to all the centers around the world. The ashes were offered to the students and they made tsatsars with them. That's one thing you can do, really good thing. You have them blessed with this Jangwa, it's a particular puja, takes several hours and they usually do it in the monasteries. Geshe-la, I don't know if he ever does. Did you ever ask Geshe-la to do it here?
I'm not aware of
You
that.
should. I mean, he'd do all these things for you. If you have like your dead pussycat, your dead grandma, get some of the ashes, and he would do the puja for you, or have it done, and you'd bless them, and then it becomes very special. I'll say that in a minute. But what you then do is you have satsars, little images, you know, those little bas relief images of the Buddhas, mixed with the blessed ashes. Okay. So then how to bless your loved one's ashes and include them in holy objects. So that's called Jangwa, it's a special practice. So he says keeping the ashes of your loved one that haven't been blessed has no benefit for the dead or for the living. Whereas as Kurukulla Rinpoche said, now that the ashes are purified and blessed, they are actual relics or holy objects. So it can be tremendously beneficial for your loved one, Rinpoche says. Even if the person died with non-virtuous thoughts, which usually means it's definitely to be born in the lower realms, and they're in the intermediate state, you can help them change direction and receive a human body instead, or even go to the Pure Lands by relying on Jangwa. That's what he says. Then you dedicate all their merits. So who can do the practice? You can do it, but it's best to have qualified people. And then with those ashes, you can have satsars and statues and stupas made, and this is tremendously powerful again for your loved one. And instead of burying things in a cemetery, there are places. Certainly a few in America, I think, places where you can have, they have memorial shrines, where you have a little stupa and you can, and it got, like a Land of Medicine Buddha, they have that, I think. In Australia, they've got a couple, where you can have them, so then it makes it beneficial, Rinpoche says. Just to go to the cemetery is no benefit, it's just sentimental, there's no virtue, it doesn't help anybody. That's what he says, talks like that. Or you can throw the blessed ashes into the water and the air. People like that. So now, then the next stage is all the practice you can do for the next 49 days. And the 49 days is traditional because that's how long this bardo could last. You know, and there's just millions of practices he recommends. Millions of practices. Millions of practices. That's it, we've done the book. 400 pages. I mean, sort of. I mean, 2/3 of the book is the practice, it's all listed in order, you know, because there's so many of them, sutras, chantras, lama chirp, all these things, millions of things. Okay, more, some questions? What time is it? What time do you have to go home today?
It's 3.
What time are we finishing? What time are we scheduled to finish?
We put 5 on the schedule, but if you want
No,
to go
don't
earlier,
do
we can
5,
do
it's
it.
too much, 4 is good.
Sure.
30 minutes or 20 minutes will do. So any questions, folks? Any questions at all of any kind about anything?
Honorable,
Yes,
you had mentioned tobacco can pollute the subtle channels. Do things like
notice the central channel, tobacco is said to be it's very harmful, yeah, to all the, it can really be harmful to all our subtle energies, yeah. I mean, if it can create cancer, God knows what it does to the subtle energies, then
do things like pain medication and
they're
things
different
like
completely.
alter consciousness?
They're different,
and
no, they
No,
they
they're
certainly
different?
change the mind, don't they? But they're not like, these, it says tobacco because it's linked to negative spirits is what they're talking about.
Okay, so it's specific sort of
Yeah,
tobacco
and
not
marijuana,
just
things like that.
being impaired.
Huh?
It's more linked to the specific thing than it is to like something that's impairing you.
Something is what?
Impairing you, like pain medications can dull the senses and.
So then? Sorry, I missed the
I was
question.
just wondering if those things are also ways that you can pollute the subtler consciousness.
I mean, it won't help the subtle consciousness. It'll kind of cause you to hallucinate. But the point about tobacco is it can pollute you and it's connected to negative spirits who can harm you. That I think is what's behind it.
Okay,
For the
thank you.
Tibetans, yeah. What else, people? Yes.
The question, something, I'm not sure where I got this line, I tried to find it in the book and I couldn't,
Yeah.
but I thought I heard somewhere that if you recite Amitai's name 3 times, it can ward off untimely death.
I
Okay,
mean, yeah,
is that
there's
correct?
listen, Bob, there's so many pieces of advice like this.
Oh.
And someone might say 7, some might say 100. So every Lama has a different approach, and you find the source, and you're going to find different things like that. Of course, I've heard things like that. But Rinpoche doesn't talk particularly that piece of advice here.
Okay,
Yeah. Yes, somebody. Yeah.
So I want to ask a question regarding the dream meditation. We've been
Bit louder, sweetheart.
we've been talking about dream meditation and dream states, and you said clear light meditation is the subtlest one, and you can use your sleep to use that level. So how we can use it? What do you suggest for?
I'm confused about which one you're suggesting we use. We've got gross, subtle, and very subtle. So gross is this human body, subtle is when we dream, but very subtle is there's no appearance of anything. So which one are you suggesting we are
I
asking?
am asking dream meditation.
Okay, I see what you're saying. See, again, it's from Tantra, and I think there are many very sophisticated practices that we can always try to do, but most of us, if we can go through sleep and get to the dream mind consciously, then you're pretty advanced. Then you can utilize that subtle mind. Like I said, Lama Yeshe would go to sleep every afternoon. He wouldn't sleep, but he would go through to his subtle consciousness, and he would be able to practice then. So there are meditations you can do to learn, to try to practice doing that. I don't know any of them, but there are things like that for sure. They call it dream yoga, different things like this. There are lots of practices, and I don't know any of them. I've never been taught them. Don't understand. So check them out. Okay. Yeah.
2 questions. One was Dharmakaya that you spoke a little bit about. So each Buddha has a different mind stream. Is that correct? Each Buddha has a different mind stream.
That's the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it?
Okay. When you become a Buddha, and all your delusions are gone, all your virtue is perfected, all your wisdom is perfected, your consciousness pervades the universe, you see all the past, all the present, all the future of all sentient beings, and his consciousness is the same, you might as well say you're the same Dharmakaya.
Say it again, the last part.
You might as well say you're the same Dharmakaya as him.
Same Dharmakaya.
You can say that. It can't be different. But you got there from your hard work, and he got there from his hard work.
Okay.
It's not the way people talk about a cosmic consciousness and you all join it. Not like that. They don't talk that way.
That's what the question.
Not like that. No. Do you understand?
Yes.
There's no collective consciousness.
Yes.
No, not like that.
Okay.
But the Dharmakaya, when you get to the level of that subtlety of utter wisdom, utter compassion, pervading the universe, it's sort of like you can't bump into each other's consciousnesses excuse me, it's my Dharmakaya, go away, you can't think in that dualistic way. Effectively, you can say there's one Dharmakaya, but billions of emanations. But you get to your Dharmakaya from your hard work. You don't kind of plug into his Dharmakaya. But when he's Dharmakaya and your Dharmakaya, it's like you're the same one, because you both see and know and the same. You're sort of like that, do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
good.
Another question.
Yes.
So you talked about, so our body comes from mother and father and sperm and egg.
It does.
This is our body. And
Yes.
You explained about the drops and
Yes.
everything. Is our action, the child's action, affect mother's karmically? Can affect her?
How, in what sense?
Because the body came from mother.
Okay, so what do you mean by affect the mother? Give an example.
Mother can experience the effect of child's karma. Yeah.
Okay, let's say you have the karma to be born to Mary, your mother, and then you've got very heavy negative karma due to past killing or torturing people to be reborn in a very suffering body. Then you'd hurt. I mean, your mummy, she's giving birth to this very suffering body, and you get, maybe the birth is very difficult because we'd say the genes all got mangled or something, but it's due to your karma that you end up with a really mangled, suffering body. And so, of course, in that sense, your mother has also got the karma to be giving birth to you. It's not as if you caused her to suffer,
No,
but you've got a karmic connection with her.
but later when I'm already born from her body,
And now I'm lost.
um,
You're born
so
in this mangled body.
so my body came from mother and father's.
Yeah, but you traded the cause to get that particular body, whether it's mangled or beautiful.
Yeah, so is it, because I heard somebody say that, but my present action can create the cause for the parents to experience.
I don't understand that
Yeah.
means at all. It's not possible.
Because karma have to make, if you don't make your own karma, you don't
You
experience.
see, karma is a word that we use that actually refers to the law of cause and effect. We just use it shorthand. So all it means is, if you practice the piano, then who gets the result of that?
Yourself.
Yeah, you can't, somebody else can't get the result. If you sit there playing piano, I don't suddenly get the result and start playing piano. So that's how we tend to think about karma. It's impossible.
Okay.
It's utterly impossible. Whatever we do produces our own experiences. That's what it means, whether it's playing the piano or killing. It's the same meaning. So if it's not possible that can cause your mother as a result of your actions for your mother to have experience of suffering.
Like that,
If she has suffering, it's due to her actions. It's not possible. You can have collective karma together. She does her bit, you do your bit, and when you share experience it together, that's different. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we use the word karma in a weird way. I'm going to try and understand. It's very simple. Practicing piano every day brings a result. That's called karma. This is the action of cause and effect. Cause and effect. Practice results brings a result, and it brings a result in the person who did it. It's hardly constant. We don't, get all cosmic about it. We know very well if you play piano, you get the result, not me. It's the same with killing and lying and stealing and goodness. Do you understand?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Online, Erin has a question.
Yeah, go, Karen.
Online.
Go, sweetheart. Erin, yes, Erin. Hi, darling.
Thank you.
Good.
I'm wondering, I'm just trying to imagine myself maybe in the room with my family. Would it be also beneficial, like if I'm trying to support them while they're dying, could it also be beneficial for me to do silent mantras if I can't be right next to them? And
Well, I mean, of course you do what you can, but clearly they've got 5 senses. And any one of those senses that's activated can be the receiver of that. But if you can't, if you think it's not appropriate, then you do silent at least. You try to help their mind. The best you do the best you can do.
great.
You understand?
And then with the Amitabha Poa, is that something we need to get permission to
Yeah,
practice?
you've got to take initiation. Gosh, yes.
Okay.
It's even empowerment, yes.
And is there a difference in the two words between empowerment and initiation, or is
They're
it
often used synonymously, but I think in empowerment, if you take, say, for example, Chala Chakra, it's the empowerment that consists of 4 initiations. Technically speaking, when you have the highest yoga tantra, there's the word, there's the vase initiation, the secret initiation, the wisdom initiation, and the word initiation. They're the initiations, and the bigger one is really called an empowerment. We tend to call it an initiation as well. So the empowerment indicates the word that you're now empowered to do it. You're given permission to do it. But there's other types that they call jenang, where you've just got permission. It's like a blessing, a permission to do the practice, but you don't receive the initiations, those 4. It's only highest yoga tantra, I think, that has those 4. Do you understand?
great? Wonderful. Thank you so much.
What else? Yes, sweetheart.
So, thank you very much. So if you're going through the death process, you're going through the 8 stages, and you can sense the dark stage, and then the clear light. What type of practice are you supposed to do, or does it happen naturally?
No, I understand. No.
Does your
If you are at the point, if you are able to be conscious at that level, that implies you're like these yogis have spent their life meditating, having received the initiation, doing their concentration practice, doing the sadhanas, and doing this meditation again and again and again. And then they're ready for death, and they're able to go through the death process with complete control and be aware of each of the stages. So it implies that if you are aware of these stages, you've practiced throughout your life and you're quite an advanced practitioner. And if you haven't, the best you can do is die peacefully and attempt to be noticing what's going on and do your best.
And then if for some reason you find yourself in those stages.
You can't for some reason find yourself in those stages unless you spent your life practicing knowing them.
I see.
You can't just have them by accident.
So, is there an I consciousness?
A who?
An I consciousness, an ego
No,
consciousness?
no, consciousness, no, they don't talk like that. Explain what you mean by that, and I'll see if we can have a discussion.
Is there an individual awareness?
That's your mind. You don't have to call it an I, it's just your mind. That's enough to say it. You don't need to give it more words. It's your mind, your consciousness. What do you mean by I consciousness?
Just awareness of self, I guess, within those stages. Or does
If
it
you're,
have to
okay,
be-
if you are able to be aware of these stages, it doesn't come as an accident. In other words, if you sit there on the piano playing complicated Bach, we know you've practiced it for 20 years. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
You can't just sit there and play complicated Bach out of the blue. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So if you are finding yourself noticing the black awareness of this and of that, it's because you've practiced all your life and you'll be utterly conscious and you know exactly what you're doing and you know it's you doing it and you're totally in charge. Do you think that answers your questions or not? I want to communicate with you. Are you sure are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yes.
You're a very advanced practitioner at that point. Now, sometimes you might have a flash of it, in which case it's like sitting at the piano because you've got a very strong karmic connection with piano and you play a very nice piece, but you can't play it again because you haven't practiced it. It just pops up out of the blue because you've done it in the past.
So then at that point, you probably have to take rebirth as a human and.
Well, then of course, no question. If you've got any awareness, then you kind of grab it and then hope you get a decent human body and keep practicing. That's right. Exactly. Are we communicating?
Yes, thank you.
You sure?
Yes.
Good, darling. Good. I think time to go home. Enough, all right? Yes, for now, for today. So contemplate all these things, think about them. And a bit of, I should have done it last night or the other nights, but a bit of homework. When you go to bed tonight, see if you can do it tonight. Different bits of homework. One bit of homework is to make it a strong decision. When you hit the pillow, I want to see my dreams as dreams. That means being conscious during your dream that you are dreaming. I remember as a little girl, I had that vividly, people often have that. You're very aware that you're dreaming. It's a really good sign because that's a sign. If you're able to do that and practice that, then you can also be aware of the death process. But you got to practice it. So just make a strong decision. May I be aware that I am dreaming while I'm dreaming and just see what happens. Make a strong decision. And then when you, go.
So what is the next point if you are conscious at your dreams?
What's the next point?
What is the next step?
Well, at least if you're conscious, it means you can control your mind at a subtle level. Wow, well done. But at least being conscious of it is a good start. There's more to do. But if you can learn to be conscious, it's a sign of, the Lamas say, it's a good example of then in your daily life, when things go wrong, instead of launching into it and freaking out, you go, it's okay, it's just like a dream. You become more able to be not absorbed in the dramas, It's just a good sign if you can do that. Then you learn to keep practicing, so that eventually you're able to be like Lama Yeshe, who is able to go to sleep with complete control and meditate in his dream mind. It's just good practice. Do you understand? Yeah? Sure?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Does he
So
wake
wait
up?
a minute, more homework. If you wake up in the morning, now you're supposed to laugh, if you wake up in the morning, we all assume we will because we grasp at permanence, isn't it? We'll talk about this tomorrow, impermanence. We assume we will wake up tomorrow. I know with 1,000,000% certainty I'm going to be here tomorrow. I believe it. Do you see what I'm saying? We believe it. But if you do your analysis, if you do your market research tomorrow morning, a quick market research in the 50-mile radius, you're going to find a certain percentage of people who thought they'd wake up didn't. And one day it'll be us. But we don't believe it, not for 1 second, So have this practice that when you wake up, you go, wow, I can't believe I'm still alive. My petrol tank of morality hasn't run out yet. I'm going to make the most of today. That's your second piece of homework, okay? Those 2 bits. That'll do. Time to go home. Janchup Semchop Rinpoche, Maki Panam Keguchi, Kepanyampa, Mepayam, Gongne, Gondu Kova Shok, and then Gewa Di, you do Dag, Lama Sange, Drubgyone, Dro, Achikia, Malu Pa, De, Sala, Gopa Shok. So that's bodhicitta grow and grow in the hearts of all. And the second one is these seeds we planted by listening today, may we nourish them with our practice so they ripen in the future as our Buddhahood, so we can be of benefit to sentient. Dedication. That's all. All right, darlings. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. So see some of you tomorrow or whatever, isn't it? See you, sweetie pies on Zoom. Bye.